Luca Guadagnino's new movie Queer was largely entertaining, but I wanted to like it a lot more than I did. I mean, it's a gay A24 movie about two really hot men. Like, sign me up. Like, that should be right up my alley. But for some reason, it didn't quite come together in the end for me. So, a little background, the movie Queer follows a character named William Lee, who's played by Daniel Craig. He's an expat who moved from the United States to Mexico City. And we find him living his best life. He's drinking, doing drugs, and having sex with men. And then he stumbles upon a really hot young man named Eugene Allerton, played by Drew Starkey, who you might recognize from Outer Banks. And he's absolutely obsessed with this young man, and he makes it his mission to develop a sexual relationship with him. And so they develop a sexual relationship, and eventually Daniel Craig's character leads Starkey's character on this trip to South America, where he's looking for the plant that's used to make ayahuasca. And he hopes that the ayahuasca will give him telepathic abilities. And it's in that part of the movie where it kind of loses me. The movie is split up into 3 acts and an epilogue, which makes the film a little bit disjointed. Overall, I'm not really a fan of that kind of filmmaking where things are broken up like that. It kind of feels like the filmmaker or storyteller didn't know how to make the plot work without it. And in this film's case, I really liked the first 2 acts of the movie, but then it kind of went off the rails whenever they went to South America and had their ayahuasca trip. It just became too surrealistic and fantastical, and it didn't really match the first 2 acts of the film. When it comes to acting, Craig definitely disappeared into the role, and it's a role that I never really saw him playing, which I appreciate. But going into the theater, I thought I would like his character a lot more than I did. He actually creeped me out more than anything, and I think if he didn't really give me that ick factor, I would have believed his relationship with Drew Starkey's character a little bit more. As for Drew Starkey, I think this is going to be a star vehicle for him. I think he's going to be in a lot more movies after this. It was a really textured role, and I think he played off Daniel Craig really well. And he's really hot, and so if you're attracted to men, that's the main reason to see this movie, because he is just godlike in it. The supporting characters were also really excellent. Jason Schwartzman specifically was great. He played another gay man in Mexico City. He had a bunch of quippy lines that kind of lightened the mood in this otherwise dark film. And while I didn't love the 3rd act, it is the part where we were introduced to Leslie Manville's character, Dr. Cotter. She's kind of this strange woman who introduces the 2 characters to ayahuasca, and she has all this sage advice, and she really disappears into the character. Omar Apollo, the singer, also makes an appearance in this movie, and although he doesn't have a lot of lines, his scene is memorable. He has a very erotic scene with Daniel Craig that will not be forgotten. Sex is a big theme in this movie. Throughout the film, Daniel Craig's character questions if Drew Starkey's character is queer. And then later in the movie, Drew Starkey's character says, "I'm not queer, I'm disembodied." And that phrase is repeated by another character in the film. So it kind of takes on this importance. But it doesn't necessarily give the explanation of what that quote means. And I really wasn't sure leaving the film what it meant. And so I've reflected on it, and I think it may mean that he doesn't identify as queer, and he disassociates from his body when he does have sex. But I'm interested to see what other people think that means. Overall, I did enjoy Queer, and I would suggest it to other people, especially if they're in the LGBTQ plus community. Just know going into it that it's pretty out there, and it's not quite as mainstream as Luca Guadagnino's other films, like Call Me By Your Name or Challengers, but it's still worth a watch.